So, what's your fantasy? A lot of times, people will have these layers of attachments, these stories attaching to a current reality. And what happens is that instead of viewing reality for what it actually is, we fabricate a story around it based off what we want to see or what we interpret, and that creates a disconnect between what's actually happening and what we created for ourselves. And so what happens is we try to understand these situations, but we are unable to actually accept them for what they are because of the attachment, because of the perspective that we hold going into it. And so, for example, let's just say that the reality is that your husband works a lot of hours and he's never home and he always is tied down to his work and he's too tired to deal with the kids or too tired to cook, and when he gets home he's really disengaged. He's just shot, right? He's just spent all his time at work. And so the fantasy you may create around that, or the story you have attached to that, is that my husband doesn't love me, our marriage is falling apart, and whatever that may be, right? There's different layers, different beliefs you can attach to this. And therefore, unable to view the reality of what's actually happening, which is he just is working too much, you create a story, attach it to that, and that becomes your new reality, so to speak. And if you go through that process, you're never going to be able to accept the truth of what happens. You never actually deal with the situation as is, because you're not going to view it as acceptable for yourself. And that's why so many people have trouble going through these different stages of acceptance, because they are not allowing it to be the actual data of what is, but instead they're adding all this on top of it. They're creating all these different attachments. And so these can go deeper and deeper and deeper, and there can be so much emotion involved, and there can be so many different reasons that we create versus actually looking at the data for what is. And if you simply look at the data for what is without the fantasy, without the story behind it, then you can actually start addressing it, and then you can actually move on. But until there's acceptance in any of this, you can never actually go past it. You can never actually manage it. You can never actually move forward. And so what happens is that we get stuck with our belief systems, and we get stuck with limiting beliefs. We get stuck with our relationships because we have all this emotional attachment. We have all this fabrication involved, versus actually looking at the pure data of what is. And until you look at the data as data alone and no other connection to it, you're always going to be stuck. You're always going to be spinning your wheels. And when working with clients, relationships happen to be the biggest threat, or the biggest cause of frustration, or the biggest area in their life which is actually preventing them from getting in shape. Now, it may seem kind of silly, like, how is this actually preventing you from getting in shape? Well, if you think about it, most of our stress is caused by relationships in general. It could be at work, it could be with yourself, it could be with your spouse. It doesn't matter. But then that's when you start to reach that fuck it moment, right? You're upset, you're angry, you eat. You're upset, you're angry, you don't sleep right. You're upset, you're angry, you decide to do other things that are taking away from being the person you want to be. And so that's why the relationship component of all this is extremely important, because that happens to be the biggest threat to humans, since the idea of being eaten alive by a saber-toothed tiger is no longer in existence for us. Our biggest threat is actually our social relationships, and they have a tremendous impact on the way we live our lives. And that's why, being as humans, we create a lot of emotion behind our reasoning, but we also create a lot of emotion with our attachments and to the fantasies we have, and that's what prevents us from accepting what's actually happening. So the takeaway here, guys, look at the data of what's actually going on in your life, in your beliefs, in your relationships, and not the story you created behind it. Because a lot of times you realize what story you created really isn't true, but it's something that you created in order to serve yourself based off the situation that you're in. Hope this brings a little bit of clarity to those who are struggling with it. If you got any questions, feel free to reach out, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.